When you're a queen, especially one reigning for 63 years, it's only natural that a few key men will make their mark along the way. Queen Victoria had her fair share of significant relationships, each man stepping in during critical points of her life, shaping her reign, and, yes, bringing plenty of tea and gossip to keep things interesting. Long before Prince Albert or any of the others came into her life, young Queen Victoria had a special bond with her first Prime Minister, Lord Melbourne. This wasn't just politics, it was personal. She was only 18 when she took the throne, inexperienced in dealing with her controlling mother. Enter Melbourne, her political mentor, an almost father figure. She adored him, and who could blame her? He was charming, patient, and always knew just what to say. After Melbourne resigned in 1839, things took a dramatic turn. The bedchamber crisis kicked off when the new Prime Minister, Sir Robert Peel, demanded that Victoria replace her Whig ladies-in-waiting, the wives of Melbourne's political allies, with Tory women. Peel wanted a government that reflected the Tory party, but Victoria, advised by Melbourne, wasn't having it. She flat out refused to dismiss her ladies, leading Peel to resign. The result? Melbourne returned as Prime Minister. This refusal to compromise earned her the snarky nickname, Mrs. Melbourne. The Tories mocked her for being too attached to her mentor and accused her of being politically biased. The bedchamber crisis became a public scandal, highlighting how much influence Melbourne still had over the Queen. They weren't entirely wrong. Victoria leaned on him heavily, both for advice and emotional support. It also set off alarm bells about the monarch overstepping in politics. As a result, this incident became one of the catalysts for shifting the monarchy toward neutrality, and the Queen learned, eventually, to keep out of direct political influence. After the incident, Prince Leopold, Queen Victoria's uncle, reached out to Lord Melbourne. After discussions, they thought it was time for her to get married. Melbourne, already seeing how lonely she was and hearing her complaints about being tormented by her mother for years, gave her a subtle nudge toward marriage. Perhaps he realized that having a husband might balance out her reliance on him. Melbourne was never meant to stay in the spotlight forever, but he was the guiding force who shaped her in those critical early years. Here's the additional tea. Rumor has it that when Lord Melbourne gave her a list with the names of potential husbands, Victoria was like, "Okay, but no pictures?" Lord Melbourne said that could be arranged, so Victoria reached into her drawer and handed him a portrait of her future husband. Sassy. Now, we all know Victoria's deep love for Prince Albert. They were the ultimate power couple. Here's another gossip tidbit. The morning after the wedding, Queen Victoria was mesmerized by the image of her husband shaving. Since her father had passed when she was only 8 months old, and due to the Kensington system, she had never gotten close to any men. There was a small accident. Albert cut himself while shaving. And that's when Victoria learned she was lucky that her husband wasn't a hemophilia carrier. Because, you know, the British royals were basically doomed with the hemophilia gene pool. However, it wasn't always smooth sailing. At first, Albert was just seen as the arm candy, the handsome German husband with no official title or real power. The British establishment hated the idea of a foreign prince getting any real influence, and poor Albert was sidelined. This brilliant man, capable of reforming industries and handling political crises, was reduced to being little more than Victoria's accessory. At one point, it frustrated him so much that he almost gave up on his marriage. He wanted to leave or withdraw because his role was too limiting. Imagine being so capable yet treated like a royal trophy. But here's where it gets good. Albert didn't stay in that role forever. After the success of the Great Exhibition in 1851, the predecessor to today's World Expos, which he masterminded, the public finally saw him for the brilliant mind he was. In 1857, he was finally given the title Prince Consort, a nod to his importance, even if it wasn't quite the power he deserved. And let's not forget, behind the scenes, Albert was constantly helping Victoria repair her public image. Whether it was the aftermath of the bedchamber crisis or the backlash from her frequent pregnancies, Albert had her back. Without him, Victoria's reign would have been much rockier. He was her ultimate partner in more ways than one. After Albert's death in 1861, Victoria fell into deep mourning. She was inconsolable, refusing to attend public functions and spiraling into isolation. Enter John Brown, her loyal Scottish servant who was, quite frankly, the breath of fresh air she needed. Brown was rugged, brash, and didn't take any nonsense. He made her laugh, and they were both fond of horses. Their bond was so close that the rumors flew fast and furious. Was Brown more than just a servant? Was Victoria secretly in love with him? The whispers in court were deliciously scandalous. Here's a bit more tea. Brown once saved Victoria's life from an assassin and got a medal for his heroics. Brown became known as the Queen's best friend, but the press dubbed her Mrs. Brown, suggesting there was something far more intimate between them. Whether or not the rumors were true, what's clear is that Brown provided Victoria with emotional stability during her darkest days. His presence brought her back to life in many ways, though the scandalous gossip about their relationship never really faded. Victoria described him as having the strength of character as well as power of frame. The most fearless uprightness, kindness, sense of justice, honesty, independence, and unselfishness combined with a tender, warm heart made him one of the most remarkable men. If you thought John Brown caused a stir, wait until you meet Abdul Karim. Arriving in 1887, after Brown's death, Abdul was initially a mere servant sent to serve the Queen, but he quickly became her confidant, her munshi, teacher, and, yet again, the royal court was scandalized. Here was a young Indian man who taught her Urdu, introduced her to Indian culture, and sat beside her at royal banquets, much to the outrage of her household. While Brown may have been a rugged confidant, Abdul Karim was exotic and culturally intriguing. Queen Victoria was fascinated by him, and their relationship was seen as deeply inappropriate by the racist court. Victoria, however, didn't care. She insisted on taking Karim with her on her travels, which caused arguments between her and her other attendants. She showered Karim with gifts, land, and favor, making sure he had access to her at all times. Her family and staff were horrified, with many even accusing Abdul of taking advantage of the Queen. Karim's influence lasted until Victoria's death in 1901. She ensured that his position remained secure, much to the continued chagrin of her family, who tried to erase his influence after her passing. But Abdul had been a significant figure in her later years, filling a void left by both Albert and John Brown. These four men, each stepping in at critical points in Queen Victoria's life, show how she wasn't just a powerful monarch, but also a romantic and deeply emotional woman who sought strength in those around her, from Melbourne's early mentorship to Albert's partnership, from Brown's rugged loyalty to Abdul Karim's cultural intrigue. Each man left his mark, shaping not only Victoria's reign but the very image of the British monarchy. And, let's be real, without all the tea and drama they brought with them, it just wouldn't have been the same.